Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fauscette. Each week we interview experts in AI, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. Our show today is the October edition of AI Pulse. I'm joined by co-host Tom Pringle, Director of Pilot Research. Tom, good to have a good conversation again. I'm looking forward to it.
It should be fun. I'm willing to make a bet at this point in the conversation already. I suspect that we shall venture off into philosophy again, and I think there's a fair chance we may overrun our time. So I'm gonna throw down a challenge and try to see if we can keep it to time this time.
I'll write that down as a wish.
Anyway,
it's a funny thing that when I thought we were going to do this monthly show, I was like, I wonder how much we'll actually, because I mean, there is a lot of things happening, but we actually, the list is long again, and it is every month. So, and to be honest, we only had 3 weeks between because we recorded last month's show a week later than normal because of the conference season stuff. So anyway.
Indeed. Well, there's some big themes that keep popping up.
Yeah, well, there are, and speaking of that, I'm going to jump in on the first one. Let's start with OpenAI again, because I know last time we talked about the new valuation and how they were working on a round, and now, of course, they have raised that round. So, and it was interesting because the article that I saw that talked about it was also trying to compare that with other, with the other funding that's happened. And I think obviously they've dominated the news cycle, but they are definitely dominating the money cycle as well.
Yeah. I mean, this is something we spent some time on last time, and I suppose my view hasn't really changed beyond the fact that it's eye-wateringly large sums of money, and the numbers just seem to go up and up and up. I think I said that last time, but I do think it's interesting, kind of the volume of the attention that goes to OpenAI, perhaps versus some others. And I know we're going to speak a little bit about kind of VC investment in a moment or two. But yeah. It's funny because it does feel like AI is utterly dominant in terms of kind of the funding conversations at the moment. Yeah. You can flip that either way, and that's a good thing. It's going to be super transformative, or you can say it's a bad thing. It's crowding out other interesting kind of software solutions. But it is that the numbers are the numbers; they are significant.
Well, I mean, they are, and it's interesting. I mean, obviously, generative AI has has seen a ton of hype and attention, and all those things, but to think about a company, and I mean, they've raised a lot of money already, but an $18.9 billion in 2023-24, that's OpenAI's total. I mean, that's insane. But the number is, if you look at the total funding, though, like 40% of all VC funding over the last year has gone to generative AI startups, not AI startups, but generative AI startups.
Indeed. And that was the study that came out for it was US, Europe, and Israel, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
And I think one of the people involved in that study said that it was sucking the air out of the room, which I kind of I'm with that. I think I'm not skeptical about kind of the productivity benefits of AI in many ways, but I'm just not entirely sure that generative AI is the answer to all questions.
I mean, yeah, I won't answer because I don't know. I do think, I mean, it's an interesting way that the money's fallen, though, and that's if you look at the details underneath that. I mean, first of all, large company participation much larger than normal in the VC funding world. Google and Microsoft and et cetera. So that's one, but then the other is, I mean, the number is staggering, 56 billion. which is what was siphoned down to that. But if you start to dig in a little bit, it's a lot towards those foundation models, and a lot of that 56 billion went to only a few companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you got Anthropic raising another round right now, and of course OpenAI. And I mean, OpenAI, if it's 56 billion and they've raised 18 in the last year, then I mean, that's a pretty large portion of the 40% there. So I mean, it's not like it's going to a bunch of these, because I mean, every day I look at another AI startup that's probably tied to generative AI somehow, but a lot of those are not getting the money. The money's going to very few companies in general.
No, exactly. And I think that speaks to something that we've touched on before, which is, there's a debate about whether it's going to be the case that we have, when I say a handful, I mean like literally low single digit numbers of these big foundational models that power a lot of other things. And that certainly seems to be what a lot of people are indicating with their investment choices. I mean, I don't know, obviously, but it's interesting to watch it happen. And I think, I guess the question always has to be, is this the right technology for all this money to be going into, or is there going to be some kind of sharp turn at some point in the future where another Gen AI 2 years ago, no one heard of it. Is there going to be something that goes beyond that and fundamentally alters the way that we think about this when people start realizing, to your point, just how much money it's taking to do this?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a concern, and obviously energy has been a concern as well. But to play off of that though, because it's interesting, one of the other things that has happened recently, and actually I wrote something about this a couple weeks ago, is a sort of a new way to think about what used to be the large language model, or is the large language model, I should say, but it's kind of an offshoot from that, and that is this liquid foundation model, and that's startup Liquid, which is an MIT spinoff. That's their name for it. But as I dug into it more, I found out that every one of those foundation model companies were investing in something that's related to this idea, and the concept, it's a non-transformer model, and so it doesn't require it. In a LLM, you train the LLM and then you use the LLM, and that's the cycle, right? It's not continuous. It doesn't, it's not a self-evolving kind of a situation, right? But the idea with the with the liquid foundation model is that it adds in machine learning, and it creates this flexible, adaptive, continuously improving system. So you're not training it again, and you're not spending all that money, the massive amount of training up front.
Yeah,
which is an interesting twist, I think, on the problem, right? Because the energy consumption, the amount of money to train the model, those are two of the big barriers right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And if my understanding is right, they say that it's actually more efficient with things like memory as well. So the amount of resources required, lessened. And you'd think, I would almost argue, the way that you describe it sounds smarter if it's working in, I'll do my air quote, real time, if it's constantly learning, rather than it's a one-time thing. You'd imagine, just in my head at least anyway, I just imagine that would cost more in resources, but actually it costs less, which is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, because it's self-updating, and so that makes it more responsive, context aware, and more in line with like a real world, real time kind of a scenario versus now, obviously, the current LLMs, if you look at there's a divide there. The companies that have added a live internet connection, and the companies that haven't, and so so that actually improves on the performance a little, because it can pull in real time current information.
Yeah.
But this liquid foundation model goes further than that, right? So it's actually even more self-learning and much less dependent on its original training.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I think it's fascinating. It'll be fascinating to see how it plays out. I believe it's still fairly early days. We'll see more come out of that conversation pretty soon, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, and that actually also sort of plays into another thing that I saw, and that was if you're excited about the NVIDIA Blackwell GPU, you're in trouble because they're sold out for 12 months.
Yeah, I mean, I have some personal interest in this story on the basis that I do like my computer gaming, and I'm looking forward to the new Blackwell chips. Thinking, it might be good for my flight simming, but apparently they're all sold out now. What I don't know, of course, is to what extent there's the B2B supply versus the B2C consumer, and obviously that's going to be different. But the very fact that that this claim is that they have sold out 12 months worth of production of the new NVIDIA chips is, I mean, it's a bit mind-blowing, really.
Mm-hmm. It's, I mean, and it also talks about, I mean, obviously the fact that these large companies and large startups, because I mean, OpenAI is certainly valued large, but not nearly the revenue, but they're investing way ahead right now to get these chips to get these GPUs, because certainly they right now, at least, that's kind of the only solution to training the large language model in any sort of reasonable way, right? So
yeah, exactly right. I'm always blown away by the. I'm sorry, it is just a constant theme in tech, isn't it? Really, when you get your first computer, it's got sort of 512 kilobytes of memory or 640 or something, and you think that was quite a lot. And then you got your first hard drive, and it's like maybe 10 meg or 20 meg, and it just keeps going. And this is really kind of, I mean, we're talking about racks and racks and racks of servers. Sucking up a lot of power, using a lot of water for cooling, and I'm going, oh wow, this is mind blowing. Truth is, we're going to sit here in a year's time and say something about the latest greatest version of this new chip that's probably twice as fast, and so on and so forth. And it just carries on.
Well, being a bit older than you, I laughed at what you just said, though, because my first computer was something the Navy gave me. It weighed about 60 pounds. It was a laptop, only if your lap was the size of a small ship. And it was a really good machine. It had a couple of those large 5 1/4 floppy drives, but then they got in these new laptops. They were much better. They were 8088 based, and they had two of the small 3 1/4 inch or 3 1/2 inch, I guess they were, disk drives. You had one for operating system and one for the program and memory, right? So when I built my first computer when I was still in the Navy, it was during that period of time, and I bought a 20 megabyte hard drive, not gigabyte, megabyte hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
And the folks that I worked with are like, "You're crazy. Why would you waste all that money? Like, nobody needs that much storage. Like, I don't understand at all what you're trying to do." The world has changed. I mean,
the world certainly has changed. And to your point, my first experience of a PC was probably my dad's first PC. And again, 5 1/4 inch floppy drives, no hard drive. No hard drive.
Yeah, no, that was normal.
And he did not splash out and go for the enhanced graphics. He went for the CGA graphics, which were a bit. I mean, they perhaps wouldn't stand up to today's standards in terms of.
I think it might be a tiny bit annoying if you were trying to video game at this point on the CGA. But I mean, it did the job for Pong and a few games like that back then.
No, for sure. But to kind of take that theme. I mean, it is one of the reasons, I suppose, that I like sticking around technology. Why it's always caught my interest, because just when you think you know a bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of other stuff happens. And that is the technical term stuff. And the scale of these, kind of the scale of what's going on at the moment is huge, but it's going to get bigger. It is going to get bigger.
I mean, it is, and we've seen that the pace of change is dramatic, and also just the kind of the way companies are involved. And when we talked about NVIDIA with the Blackwell, but what also NVIDIA just launched their own language model too. So I mean,
yes, there was there was an article I saw. It wasn't particularly announced. It appeared on was it Hugging Face? It appeared on. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really get I think VentureBeat's where I saw it originally, but
Okay.
and I ended up like, I don't know, I probably posted it on LinkedIn or something because it is an interesting move, and apparently the results were quite good, but they didn't really. I mean, I don't even know if there was a big press release. I didn't see it. So
neither did I, and I saw the same VentureBeat article that you clearly saw. Sort of saying it has impressive results.
Yeah.
And you've got to start asking questions, right? So coming off the back of all those GPUs being sold out for a year, that is a pretty strong position to be in from a market perspective.
I guess they don't have to worry about getting GPUs.
Yeah, you got your own private supply. And then to be releasing a model that is meant to be at least comparable, if not better, than some of the existing models. Yeah. It looks like NVIDIA has a lot to say and do in this space at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have been at the forefront, and I guess their valuation shows that's true, right? But I mean, still, they're in the mix. And when I talked about that liquid foundation model, NVIDIA is one of the players that is working on adaptive AI. They call it. I think they call it adaptive AI, so something like that. But rather than liquid foundation model, but it's the same idea, right? That it's an aware model versus the current LLM pre-trained model. So
yeah, that's well, an aware model. And that's interesting because that kind of starts to make my brain shift. A certain blog post that we may or may
not. I'm not sure if that qualifies as a blog post. I'd consider it an ebook, but so I guess we should probably explain that one, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
So Anthropic CEO posted last Friday, I think so, a week ago, 15,000 words or somewhere in that neighborhood.
It was something like that, close to, yeah.
Talking about, and this is interesting too, because there's one of my favorite podcasts is Hard Fork. It's a New York Times tech podcast, comes out every Friday, and they were actually talking about this, and the twist to it I thought that was interesting, because Anthropic in the AI world has kind of a reputation for being kind of doom and gloom. Like the people that left OpenAI that founded Anthropic were people that were trying to hold on to that original safe AI vision, and so they were talking about, the two hosts were talking about visiting Anthropic, and they spent like a few weeks there, just to kind of get involved in them and understand and learn. And they said the whole time they were there, that every time they'd talk to somebody about it, that the employees would all be like real doom and gloom about, like, well, we're trying to keep it from taking over the world and killing everybody, kind of a thing.
That would be a plus.
I mean, that's a little bit of a marketing twist to the way you're selling your technology, I guess. But anyway, they said this was like a real flip, because, and I mean, and the subtext, of course. And I'm not saying this is why I did it. I think there's probably a lot of good in this article, don't get me wrong, but they are also raising around right now. So
yeah, absolutely. Look, there were two or three things in there, and I will confess at this point, Michael, I did not read the whole thing. I have.
It's a long one. It's a tough one. Yeah.
However, to be fair, I might well give it a read this weekend.
Yeah.
It was interesting because there were a couple of predictions in there, I suppose. There's the 2026 number. And what was it? Instead of talking about sort of a general artificial intelligence, he was talking about powerful AI.
Yeah, they called it powerful AI instead of AGI, and I mean, maybe that makes it sound less dangerous. I don't know. Maybe.
I don't know either.
I mean, he said that it was smarter than a Nobel Prize winner. I think that was the exact quote.
Yes, that's so. Yeah, we can all assume safely that if that happens in 2026, that would be a pretty fantastic capability. And focusing on the positive, yes, absolutely. I mean, compressing medical research and
Yep.
kind of things we've talked about in the past, the ability to tackle some of the biggest questions, which I would say that we have mixed results currently on how we tackle them.
Yeah.
I don't intend to get into the politics of it. But, I think if it's that powerful, of course, all technology isn't inherently good or bad. It's technology and it's how you use it. And you can use it something incredibly powerful for good things, and you can use something incredibly powerful for not so good things.
Well, I love the title of it, though. The Machines of Loving Grace. That was the title. If you're looking for it, in the audience, you should do a search on that. You can definitely find it, and it is worth a read. I mean, it is long, but the one thing that I really liked about that part when they were talking about the progress and how progress gets compressed was this statement that he said that he believes that powerful AI could compress 100 years of medical research into 10 years.
Yeah.
And cure all sorts of illnesses and, alleviate poverty, all this sort of things. And the one that I'm particularly interested in, and I had talked to my daughter several times about this, is, uploading my mind to the cloud, which I mean, if we could do that, I'm kind of okay with that model. I'm just saying.
Interesting. I didn't know we were going to go here today.
Yeah. I mean, it was in his blog post. It didn't come from me. So.
Okay. But clearly you've had thoughts on this subject, and I'm not entirely sure that I want my brain in a cloud.
I mean, it's better than having it, just incinerated.
Yeah, I think this would warrant a much longer conversation.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But for sure, I think exactly that. You can look at, and it's just the same law. You can be optimistic about it, you can be pessimistic about it, and you can do your best to be careful and realistic and somewhere in the middle. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the same way that we said last time around, and we touched on it earlier, the billions of dollars and the scale of all of this and the cost of all this and resources. Huge, mind-blowing numbers, but actually it might be a drop in the ocean if some of these things that people are talking about could happen.
Yeah.
I mean, to do that's a great quote, isn't it? Do 100 years medical research in 10 years. Or whatever the exact.
I mean, that boggles the mind if you just sort of say that, and then you think about that for a minute. Like, how can you cure cancer in that amount of time? Probably. I mean,
yeah. So kind of the upside is incredible and amazing, and if it happens by 2026, I don't know. I feel like that's possibly a little close for me, but.
I mean, this actually, I know Sam Altman at OpenAI, I know he said something about that recently too, like it's thousands of days, not years, kind of a statement. And I mean, that all sort of aligns. We'll see. But I have, in the 2 years that I've been deeply involved in this, I've never seen anything change as quickly and have as hard a time keeping up with everything that's changed.
Yeah, that whole kind of transition to cloud computing seems relatively straightforward now, right?
It does. And actually that was what I meant to mention when we were talking about the funding. That was in that article about the VC funding shifting to generative AI. That was one of the comments they made, that a lot of SaaS cloud plays were hurting for funding because that money was not going directly, not going where it used to go, which was cloud and SaaS, but going into Gen AI. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe. It is very interesting to sort of sit here and speculate. I guess we will see as it unfolds ahead of us.
Yeah.
But I still, it does take me to kind of this place though, where when we've sort of hinted at this or talked a bit about it in the past, which is not just about the good or bad use of the technology, but who actually controls the technology. And that's the first question that comes up in my mind. And then the sort of second question is really around explainability, right? So I don't think I could describe effectively, efficiently, or indeed at all, the inner workings of a Nobel Prize winner's brain. So we've got this powerful AI that's smarter than a Nobel Prize winner's brain.
Yes. Yeah.
I definitely don't think I could explain it. And I think, kind of, does that mean that you say, this answer is so brilliant, I don't care how it got there? Or do we have a question mark there?
I mean, yeah, that's a complicated one too, I guess. I when I look at it, I go, if it's managed in the way that we're getting all this output from it that is so amazing and compressed, especially from a biological, medical, those kinds of innovations in energy, climate. I mean, there's all sorts of problems that we need quick solutions to that we haven't really been able to do that. But if you think about language models in general, I mean, even just an LLM, like, we understand how it does the thing it does, but its output's not predictable, and not as predictable anyway. I mean, I was reading a funny article about, because I mean, poor Google Gemini's gotten a fair bit of bashing over the year for for producing things like the somewhat racially inappropriate images that it that it did earlier in the year. And there's a meme that went around this last week that somebody had asked Google search, which has that pre-Gemini section now that answers it from AI. They'd ask it, what's the difference between a sauce and a dressing? And the answer was, all this detailed about what a sauce is. You build it, it has all this flavor, blah, blah, blah. And then the second part of the answer was this sort of discombobulated talk about how it covers a wound and it needs to be X amount larger than the wound size. And you can put it on this size salad. And it was like, wait, what? There's something not good there. I don't know exactly, but so I mean, there are unpredictable results, I guess, was my point.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I suppose if the computer thinks dressing's dressing, it could be a medical dressing, it could be something for your Caesar salad.
It did. I mean, apparently it collapsed all the things that a dressing could be into one answer, which is efficient. I mean, not useful, but it is efficient.
No, I'd not seen that one, to be fair.
You should check that one out. It was pretty.
One that I saw floating around LinkedIn quite a lot the last couple of weeks. I don't know if you saw this one. Was the people asking ChatGPT about themselves? Tell me something about myself. And then kind of coming up with interesting kind of things about based on their interactions with the tool.
Yeah. I haven't tried that one. I did actually see that. I might actually try that. Just I'm curious now. But you mentioned transparency, and I think that's important. And obviously that's been a big part of the kind of push around regulation too. And I wonder, I mean, we know LLMs, there's a bit of unpredictability, and if you move to a liquid foundation model type paradigm, does that make it worse? I mean, because it's continuously learning and improving itself, which I don't know.
Well, so the question I would immediately ask at that point is, so then, we all know that when we need to talk about things like data science and analytics, which we still do talk about, let's be honest about it, but it just all the conversation has moved on to the world of AI. But we also know that when we talk about those things and when we talk about AI, one of the biggest challenges, if not the single biggest challenge, is the data, right?
Yeah.
And the scale of the data, the availability of the data, and the quality of the data.
Quality, yeah.
And quality covers a whole range of different stuff, from kind of whether it's just factually correct, to whether it's got bias in it that could impact outcomes.
Right.
So my question is, how do you, in a machine learning model of the type that we're talking about, it almost sounds like you've got a pipeline, kind of just, forgive the visual image, it kind of sort of works. You've got like a pipeline of data kind of continuously being fed into this machine. how do you build those checks in to the data that's going in? Yeah, is it possible to do that?
Well,
And just paste
yeah.
it. That's
No, I mean it's an interesting, and actually, so that brings me back to my earlier statement about, there's this dichotomy of in large language models, some have a live internet connection, some don't. If the model has a live internet connection, then you don't have that same level of quality control on that part of the data. You just don't, right? Because
no.
it's whatever's posted on the internet is what it gets.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, well, I'll stay away from that one. But
we all know that everyone on the internet is 100%. Everything that's published is completely. Yeah, I'm going to stop speaking.
Yeah, we're in an election time frame here in the U.S., so I'm not going to comment on that at all. Anyway, the other thing I was, this kind of makes me think about the use of the technology in general, and I did a maturity model not long ago, just trying to think through what the levels of adoption were in the business, and like a level 0 where nobody's doing anything, and then a level 1 where it's kind of being brought in by people. And I know you brought up something, and I'll defer this conversation to you, but you know where I'm going. The fact that I have it as a level, and now all of a sudden we're starting to have a conversation about shadow IT again.
Yeah, it's one of those wonderful topics that doesn't go away. Yeah. And again, kind of, that was a fairly neat connection. I'm going to give that one a good 9 out of 10. That was impressive, very smooth. So not just in terms of kind of people smuggling in their own Gen AI tool au choix, but also things like, for example, what if you're giving it access to data it not to have, right? Yeah. So that could be your company's IP. It could be where a lot of your company's value is based. It could be that it's private or sensitive data that then ends up being in the wrong place, and so on and so forth. I think we all know, as everyday consumers, just people living day to day, we've all got too many passwords, right?
Yeah.
Now, and you think about the number of solutions used in companies, even relatively small companies. You can be talking about tens and tens and tens of different logins, it starts to get messy. But
password manager is a good business to be on, I guess, is where you're going with that.
I don't. Yeah, well, I mean, that article that you're referencing kind of got into the whole conversation as well about passkeys and single sign-on, and kind of the work that's going on there. And I've never claimed to be a cybersecurity expert, but I do think that if there's a tool that people want to use because it solves a problem for them, they will go ahead and use it, and to heck with the consequences is quite often the case. And with what's possible, with the kind of the different AI solutions that are out there at the moment, you've got to start thinking that does have some interesting question marks hanging over it.
Well, you mentioned data leakage, and this is something I thought about before. As an analyst, I get a lot of non-disclosure based, information from my clients, that I at least have to hold confidential for X amount of time, right? Eventually it's public. But I was thinking about this not long ago, and it actually led me to approach this differently. But often and I'm sure other analysts do this too, but when you get some information like that, a PowerPoint deck or something, and you want to just kind of keep the notes about it, it's pretty handy to just have AI summarize it, right? So you just upload the deck and have it summarize. Except I thought about that and I went, wait.
That might not be a good thing.
I don't know that I've never heard anybody mention this, but if you think about it, if I'm uploading this to one of my publicly available models, then I'm theoretically in violation of an NDA.
Yeah, that would be bad.
But I'm sure people are doing it and not even thinking about that. But so, I built my own local model, and I took one of the open source models and configured it, and it's not attached to the internet, and so it has no way that it can upload to its former open source model or whatever. So that's fine, and it does what I want. It summarizes in a safe environment. But I don't know that people really I mean, especially if you don't really, you're just using ChatGPT or Gemini or,
Yeah.
Claude or whatever. I don't know that you really think about the fact that if you're uploading context, which is content, and it's important to do, but if it's proprietary information or data, the model, is it training on that? I mean,
Yes, and there's the question, right? So, I mean, I've said before, I'm a user of Gemini, and Google's very specific about it. When you're using Gemini for business, it says, we will not use your company data for training our model.
Right.
But to your point, I think it's not even like we can predict all the different risks that are out there. So some of them we just haven't thought about yet. So to your point, summarizing the deck, that could end badly or could end poorly.
Yeah.
But there's lots of other things going on as well, which is just, I think I'm gonna urge caution.
Yeah, well,
I always do.
Yeah, and I'm saying let's go for it. Let's go.
Yeah, you do have a somewhat different approach.
Well, it's a different risk profile, I guess. That's the way to say that. I don't know, anyway, well, the other thing that we've been talking about a lot, and we talked about it in the last show, and I just want to make sure we get this in because I was intrigued by this, and we could have probably called this show the foundation model show because we've been talking about them off and on the whole show. But there's something else that's been really hot in the last 6 months, maybe longer than that, but especially in the last 6 months around autonomous agents or agentic AI, or there's a bunch of things that it's called, and one of the issues there, of course, is it's taking action for you, and so there's a certain amount of real time and reactionariness to that whole process, right? That it's doing a thing and that thing needs to be done. It can't lag greatly or whatever.
Yeah.
And I saw an article about a startup. They call them arch function LLMs, but the startup Catanemo, I don't honestly know if that's the right way to pronounce that, but that's the only way I could figure out. Catanemo is the startup, and they have this intelligent infrastructure for AI native applications that open sources arch function, and then it uses it uses LLMs in a way that makes them ultra fast, so they can react much more quickly for those tasks that the agentic AI is trying to execute, or the workflow and there were, I think it was 12 times faster than the best LLMs right now, or something like that. I mean, it's a lot faster, and if you think about that in real time decision making and action, which is the point of the the agentic AI piece, that could be a significant improvement in the performance of those agents in those real time scenarios.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not going to pretend I understand 100% of that particular article. That's not because it's not valid. It's simply because I didn't get time to give it the amount of time I should have. So that's on me. But yeah, exactly right. So if I'm thinking about kind of the complexity of some enterprise workflows, and really things like super speedy. Some things can be, I don't know, I worry a little bit about the use cases, because some things I think, well, if we're replacing a human doing this and this and this, or modifying or enhancing or augmenting the process that the human's doing, that's fantastic. Human moves at a certain speed. You can't make the human go faster, but you can make the agent go faster. It's just interesting thinking about, kind of which parts of a big company or organization would benefit from that. You start thinking things, I start thinking things like, particularly in finance, potentially. I think a little bit about I think about the opportunities in things like supply chain as well. I can't, because they're huge. I mean, supply chains, we all depend on them. It's the physical part of the world that we sometimes forget exists.
Yep.
Because we sit at home ordering stuff. At least I do. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I do too.
So I think it's really interesting to see kind of how that plays out. I'm a big fan. I don't know how I feel about agentic AI. It's another AI term to learn, but I like the agent idea.
Yeah. I mean, there's been so much, and I did a show with Ryan Nichols, who's the chief customer officer at Salesforce Service Cloud a couple of weeks ago. And of course, we were talking mostly about, autonomous agents and how they've incorporated that into Service Cloud. And I'd say, Salesforce is certainly leading, one of the leading vendors around these agents that take action for you. And there's this whole decision intelligence world that, like Era Technologies and some of the other players there too, they've been doing this automated decision making for a while. It's kind of, the next level of RPA in some ways, because it's intelligent RPA, I guess is a way to think of it. But anyway, the point is that agents are taking action now. And in service, if you had a bot that was one of these autonomous agents that could interact with customers up front, there are a lot of problems you could easily eliminate, or even take action for the customer, if that agent had the capability to do that. But in a service interaction, that timing does make a huge difference, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
It is real time, and if it says it's going to fix this order for me, but then I have to sit there for 10 minutes while it goes and does whatever that thing is, I'm not happy. I'm not having a good experience. But if it does it, in a nanosecond, then I'm happy, right? I mean, that's what I expect.
Precisely. And you think about kind of the scale of this, of course, as well. So, I mean, when you talk about customer service, you're talking about a big company with lots of big B2C customer company. Then you're also talking about a scale issue as well, right? So you're going to have lots of people try and change their order or do this other thing that they wanted to do. My only word of caution, I suppose, I always make the joke that computers allow us, and AI actually particularly allow us to do things really, really fast. And sometimes doing things really, really fast, if they're wrong, is not necessarily the right choice. But I would say this, in no seriousness whatsoever, hopefully in your scenario as described, no one asks about sauces and dressings.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, exactly. Although I will say, and we're running a little bit short on time, so I guess we probably should think about ending. But there's one story I have to talk about, because I was so amazed. And you're a dog lover, I'm a dog lover, so I couldn't resist this one. But there's an article I read this week about a company called Shazam Band, or maybe that's the product name, but that helps your dog be able to communicate more effectively. Actually, it makes your dog able to talk to you. I mean, I haven't tried it. I haven't tried it. I
haven't tried it either. I didn't even manage to read the darn article, unfortunately, because that's when we were chatting the other day, talking about some stuff we were going to put onto the conversation today. That's when
I like the idea. So the idea was they've created this AI that monitors the physiological reaction of the dog, I guess, and then it can help communicate by expressing something around, like, oh, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm hungry, I'm like whatever, right? So simple things. I mean, it's some not maybe as simple, like my dog has an emergency and it texts me or whatever. So I mean, I like the idea of it. I think it's cool. I mean, I track I have an air tag on my dog because I'm just paranoid, I guess. But I think the idea of having it talk to me is interesting. But then again, there are times when I look at my dog and see it looking at me, and I think, I really don't want to know what my dog is thinking about right now.
Yeah, it's that moment when our dog looks at you and he's about to steal something he ought not to steal. You know that there's definitely that moment when he knows that he's about to do the wrong thing. You know he's about to do the wrong thing. And there's a whole lot of non-verbal communication happening. No, but when you first mentioned this, that it's entertaining, I just thought that the movie Up, with the guy whose house he lifts it up with the balloons and goes off on his own adventure. And there's the dogs. And one of them was called Doug, if memory serves. I can't remember. But they're having full-on conversations, apart from being interrupted by when they think they've seen a squirrel. So that's where my head went immediately. And I thought, classic. Movies have done this already.
Yeah, maybe that's where they got the idea.
Who knows? Do I have a strong yearning for my dog to wear a collar that allows him to communicate with me? I don't know.
I mean, maybe it takes some of the mystery out of the relationship. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I often think dogs are sort of fairly straightforward in that. Back to last time's trip. We're now a dog podcast, or we're not a dog podcast.
Yeah, exactly. If you just cut in at this point, you might think
this
that
is
we
going to
are.
be really confusing. But no, I think kind of obviously there's the sort of the nice bit around the safety aspects and all that kind of stuff. And we want to make sure we look after our pet friends. But I'm not entirely sure I want much more than that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm intrigued by the idea of it.
Well, you would be. If you could have your dog emailing, you'd have your dog emailing.
I think if she could just text me, I don't really need the more email, but I would take a text from my dog whenever she wants. I mean, that would be fine. I'm okay with that.
So what happens if she sends you a voice note or something?
I mean,
do they have auto translate for voice notes?
It's okay. I mean, I guess. Anyway, so that's all the time we have today.
And as we fly off the rails at a complete 90-degree tangent, shall we call it a day?
Yeah, I think it's probably time to sign off. So I'm Michael Fauscette.
I'm Tom Pringle.
Thank you for joining us for this month's AI Pulse and Dog Conversation Show.
Thanks, everyone.
And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining. Remember to hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a 5-star rating on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform to help others find the show. For more on AI and other software research reports, briefs, and blog posts, check out arionresearch.com. If you have AI, generative AI, or business automation expertise, either as a provider or as an end user, email your information to disambiguation@arionresearch.com, and we'll see if we can get you on as a guest. Don't forget to join us next week. Disambiguation is an Arion Research production. I'm Michael Fauscette, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.